Hello, Vortex again. So I don't know what I'm going to talk about when I go into this, but I'll just try and reel off how I feel about how things are going, I suppose. Just like I was doing before, just sort of get a general feeling from the news, the media have been consuming about how the Russian invasion of Ukraine is proceeding, and sort of how I feel about it at this point. So I think basically, I don't think. I mean, Putin's basically. There's no way out of it for Putin, really. Like he's whatever If this conflict ends somehow, there is no other way it can end apart from Putin either relinquishing power or getting overthrown. I think really, those are the only two paths available to him. Either some sort of trial by the international community, where he'll probably be in prison for the rest of his life, or being shot or killed or whatever. And I don't really feel that it's particularly provocative to say that, considering what he's done. I don't think it's provocative at all, to be honest. I mean, there is a point where leaders have to be accountable for their actions, And I don't think a lot of people, I'm pretty sure a lot of people in the Russian government didn't want this. The Russian people certainly didn't want it. Like, there is, it's not like 100%, but like a lot of Russian people did not want this invasion. Like, not at all. What have they got to gain from it? The Ukrainians are their brothers. The Ukrainians are their, they're like ethically of the same. Not that even matters, but they're like they're brothers basically in one way or the other. And this is a horror, and it's been inflicted upon them. And probably the only way that you're going to get any sort of stability in that region, obviously, is that, obviously the conflict ends, and then there will have to be a process of rebuilding for Ukraine because of what's happened. The Russians be rolling in there. I saw some very, it's weird to see all this footage, but I saw this footage of like Molotov cocktails raining down on Russian tanks, just like civilians, I think, even just throwing Molotov cocktails. And you just see the other footage of like Kiev sky being lighting up. It's just horrendous, mate. It really is. It's horrible. It's horrible to see this unfold, and there is no possible justification for what Putin has done. Anybody who tries to justify it. Fair enough. Like that, I've seen a few people going into the deeper geopolitical, historical, or political history questions. Fine, and pointing out the hypocrisy of the West. Fine. I'm no fan of the sort of neoliberal regimes in the UK and the US and all that. Why would I be a fan of that? It's got its own internal structural problems. They are not far from ideal societies. But I guess one thing I'd say is that they are not. They do have some sort of version of like a sort of surveillance state aspect to them. Actually, to be fair, there is that a little bit in some, but there's also institutions that have been put in place, especially when the UK legal system is actually quite. It's actually fairly advanced. Like a lot of. I think I'm not a lawyer expert, legal expert. A lot of the, sort of modern law basically comes from British legal system, and I don't want to go on to this, but let me just switch on to something else. So, the Ukrainian president has been. Everybody's talking about this in a minute. He's shown a lot of guts actually because he's staying with his people. He's potentially a great risk to himself. He's standing with his people. He's doing leadership by example basically, which in this day and age is quite admirable and rare. Like in this day and age, we're cynical about politicians, aren't we? We don't expect them to we expect them to, if they get into trouble like this, we expect them to, if they they've been invaded. They expect them to get to a bunker from afar. I mean, I'm sure Putin's somewhere in a bunker now, or somewhere protected by, so that no missiles come down on him. Well, like he probably is somewhere in a bunker, like. And I don't know the exact location. I don't have the update, but updates on his location. But that's quite telling, really. I mean, I'm sure also the Ukrainian president is going into protection as well on some level, but he stayed with his people and been fighting with his people, and that actually speaks a lot. I mean, can you imagine Putin going on the battlefield with a? And the funny thing about Putin, well, not funny, haha, but just strange thing is that he's always projected this like almost insecure macho image. If you're really a good leader, and if you really actually extol proper like masculine qualities of leadership, if you want to call it masculine qualities, another debate, but then you see the Ukrainian president who's actually doing that. He's extolling bravery. He's actually, his actions are his ideals and his principles, right? And I'm not I don't know that much about him. I don't know a great deal about his background, his history, his politics. I've heard that generally speaking, it's pretty good. It's like centrist left, I guess, which to be fair is pretty good. But I don't know. Like don't quote me on that, but. I don't know what else I can add. I mean, I'm sort of like, in the minute I've sort of zoned out from analysing it way over the top now, but I need to stay engaged with it because, I owe it to both the people in Ukraine who are suffering now, massively suffering, and fighting this invasion, and I also owe it, ironically enough, to my students that I used to teach when I was in Russia, who will be very scared now. They'll be scared. They're just kids. Like they're going to be terrified. They're going to think the worst. You always think the worst when you're a kid. So I need to try and make sure they're okay in whatever way I can. Just try and give them messages of hope and stuff. And also just hope that the Russian people can somehow get rid of Putin, essentially, because at this point, even if the oligarchs overthrow him or whatever and bullet in his brain, I don't think that's a great loss to humanity at this point. I mean, that might cause more trouble than it's worth. The only thing with that, though, is that it might create a weird power vacuum that you could get something worse in, but I don't know. That's always the worry with that sort of thing. Obviously the First World War started from an assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, right? So different situation, right? I know, but I'm just making the point, I guess, that it's not always the best idea for to, even if the person's a real arsehole and dickhead like Putin is, killing him might actually cause more trouble than it's worth. I've been thinking about this recently, but I don't know. But then I also think of what he's done as well. I'm sort of like, I'm thinking of it from two different angles. So the sort of pragmatic side of me would say, probably if you not pragmatic, more like philosophical, like just big picture thinking, would think he needs to go to sort of like assume any sort of moral, any claim to morality, I suppose, or moral high ground or whatever. You'd have to try him as a war criminal, probably, or something like that, I guess, or just like have some trial and then basically he'll go to prison. But then that is not always guaranteed, because sometimes there can be corruption behind the scenes. The thing itself can be corrupt, and then then he gets away with it somehow. I mean, that might be possible, but I don't think it would be. This is all speculation, of course, so let me say that. But then the other thing is that, I mean, this is like highly speculative. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, that either internally he gets overthrown by his own people, which I think there was actually a fair good chance of that happening. I mean, I'm not really I need to be up to more to date with the protests, but that is a vague possibility that might happen. And if the Russian people, just keep the momentum going, keep the strength, then they might actually. And the government may eventually. Remember, it's like a house of cards, right? So the more protests there are on the street, the more they get worried. I mean, the Russian police are just going to keep on throwing waves and waves and waves of riot cops at people or whatever, and arresting and mass arrests and everything. But once it reaches a sort of groundswell of support, then there is actual potential for. And if the police, one thing which would actually change it, the way I don't know if this actually happened, but I'm sure there's a lot of internal disagreement even within the Russian police. Now, the Russian police, I've lived in Russia for 3 years, right? The Russian police have a reputation of being corrupt and of being basically just not great cops, right? But there are obviously good people in the Russian police who have a sense of morality and duty and just want to preserve law and order, and they're not like bad cops or whatever. So I guess it's probably a good thing to try and appeal to them and reach a hand out to those ones. I mean, there is a lot of, like, don't get me wrong, there is a lot of historical corruption in the Russian police and blah blah blah. But maybe that would be possible. Again, I don't know. I'm actually personally never had too bad of an experience with the Russian police when I was there. Never really ever, to be honest. But obviously I kept my head low. I was just, I wouldn't. I never got in trouble actually at all, which is good. Well, I wasn't. I was a good boy. Anyway, I think I'll leave it there. That's just sort of my thoughts on where we're up to now in the conflict. A bit rambling this time. I'm just sort of trying to, think about it on a higher level, more complex level, which takes a bit of time to, sort of crystallise, I guess. Have a good one.